Hey everyone, welcome to This Professional Life, and thank you for joining us on this special series called Amplify Alberta, where we showcase and discover organizations that make Alberta, Alberta. My name is Chris Young. I am Senior Manager of Client Development at Dentons Canada LLP, and I'm also a contributor on This Professional Life. And today we are joined by Trevor Huggins and Matt Boudreau, founders and operators of FIVE'21 Coffee Roasters here in Calgary. So with that, Trevor, if you could give us a brief background about FIVE'21 and talk a little bit about your journey and how you came about starting this business.
Started as a hobby, and still to this day, I look at it as a hobby, even though it's full throttle as a business. So I started with roasting in the kitchen on a whirly pop. Started ordering some coffee from a local supplier here in Calgary, where I was able to get smaller quantity of green beans at a relatively affordable price. The whirly pop was great. It started just this morning ritual between my wife and I, and smoking out the entire house. And around that same time, we had a young girl as well, a young daughter. So from that, I went, and Karina mentioned to me, she's like, well, if you're really enjoying the coffee that we're roasting here, why don't you get a machine and start getting this into maybe something a little bit more serious? And I was like, a little bit of pushback here and there, but I knew that it was inevitable just based on the passion that I was growing with it. From that, I was roasting on a 500 gram roaster from Mill City. And I just found that I was spending more and more time in the basement roasting, just trying to hone in on just that roasting skill. Watching endless amounts of videos. From there, I was spending too much time downstairs. So Karina mentioned to me, she's like, well, why don't you get like an actual commercial machine? And then from there, that's where FIVE'21 just kind of grew.
So Matt, how do you fit into this picture?
I'm still trying to figure that out, Chris. I met Trevor probably a little over a year and a half ago or so.
We just had our year anniversary.
Yeah, we just passed our official 1 year.
Oh, congratulations.
For me, it was more curiosity of entrepreneurship and local business and all that sort of stuff, but also just a passion for coffee as well, and just a love for it and wanting to know a little bit more. So spent a little bit of time just at the roastery, learning the process, figuring all that out. And then I think we dated for a while and kind of looked at each other and said, like, I can help you, you can help me. Like, let's join forces and let's take this thing. I mean, we got an amazing brand, a great story, really great product. Let's pump this thing to the next level. So that's kind of where I came in, probably officially about a year ago or so. And then we officially signed documents this year to bring me into the company. So,
Trevor, was there any coffee? I know you said you went on and did, I'm assuming, YouTube videos. It seems like there's a lot on there that we can dig from. But prior to that, was there any experience dealing with roasting coffees or even selling coffee, I guess?
No, zero, to be honest. I did. I worked the original. If I had to look back even before I started roasting coffee, Chris, it was when I worked in 911 dispatch. Every morning that I was on shift in that call center, I would go around to every single person on that floor and I would take orders for coffee. I just really enjoyed starting my day with a cup of coffee and just starting your day on a really good positive note. That's originally where, if I had to look back further, that's where it all came from. And that was upwards to 50 plus people that I was going to, right? So that's the start of it all.
And Matt, what about yourself? Were you a coffee guy, or you had a little bit of coffee experience?
Always been a coffee guy. Back in started in university when I was like, ooh, caffeine, look what this does for me when I need to study and all that sort of stuff. But I was previously a teacher, and teachers have a pretty big desire and passion for coffee, and then a banking career. So it was just more of I think as I grew a little bit older, my palate was starting to want better things. I mean, we were changing up how we're eating and a lot of other things. So it was more just starting to notice the difference in coffees and what was good and what was bad, and wanting to put less milk, sugar, additives to it to change the flavor, mask whatever flavor was going from it. So once you start to notice that, you start digging in a little bit deeper, and that's when you start like, okay, I'm curious. I'm realizing I'm really curious about this. So
yeah, and then adding to what Matt's saying as well, like just that I chose coffee simply because you keep learning with it. There's endless information out there, and once you feel like you have a handle on things, something comes your way, and then you're able to guide yourself through that and learn more about it. Coffee, you're always learning. It never ever stops. There's regions around the world that are trying new practices, growing with different soil, fermenting different techniques, storing coffee differently. It's just constantly learning. And I mean, Matt's been an absolute blessing to 5'21 Roasters, because he shares not only that passion, but he has that local influence as well, right? And we just work really well together. Matt's really embraced being thrown to the wolves and like just learning what 5'21 is, and just creating those memories together. So it's been good.
Nice. So Matt, you're full time at 5'21, and Trevor, you're still a full time firefighter as well. Trevor, can you talk to me a little bit about your firefighting background and how that's influenced the development of 5'21?
Yeah, so I am full time still with the city of Calgary. We work 24-hour shifts. We're currently in the middle of a pandemic. The journey with 5'21 has been really good with bringing in the coffees to work and all that kind of stuff, and getting the feedback from the guys that I'm working with. That's generally where we started a lot of our original trials, was bringing in the coffee and getting guys to try it. And it was actually our scheduler that sent me a message and was like, you should really start selling this stuff. Like, I would be paying for this. And I was just so passionate about this hobby that I was like, there's no way I wouldn't try. Like, I wouldn't charge anyone for this cup of coffee. Like, I'm just loving doing this, right?
Right.
But even growing from that, 5'21 takes a bit of a personal note too, right? So my dad he passed away about 4.5 years ago. And during the time where 5'21 was kind of started was when I was up in Fort McMurray fighting the wildfires, which is actually where my sister and her husband live to this day. And so my battalion chief actually phoned me personally and said, hey, Trevor, I hear you have family up in Fort McMurray. Would you be open to going up there? Internally through the fire department, it was a lottery. So everyone was able to respond and say, yes, hey, does anyone want to go up to Fort McMurray? And then it was a lottery. But my battalion chief called me personally. So at that same time, while I was up there in Fort McMurray, my dad was on vacation in the Panama Canal, and he basically was put on life support on a cruise ship, and then flown back home during the same time that I was actually up fighting fires. So then, I was able to connect, and then came back, and then we had to take him off life support. So the story from 5'21 is basically my dad, so he worked in the grocery industry for 40 plus years. And obviously a lot of people saw him walking through the stores and would come up to him and ask him, ho, you're really tall. We were talking about height at the beginning of this. And so he would say, like, because it was almost like he was on stage. There wasn't only one person listening. So they'd be like, how tall are you? And he'd say he was 5 feet 21 inches, which is where 5'21 Roasters came from.
Nice. Matt, how has COVID impacted the business overall, positive or negatively? How's that either changed the way you guys work, or has that helped you guys?
It entirely changed our business, but I think the good thing with us initially is we were kind of going through a stage where we had some vision for 2020 and what we wanted it to look like, some targeted goals, and we were able to really make some really quick decisions and shift fast and hard in terms of just the impact of the initial COVID first wave and lockdown and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, that first week we had a meeting. We're like, okay, what do we want to do? We went to 24-hour delivery, knowing everyone was at home. Everyone's going to want to drink coffee. We're going to want to get them good coffee to their door. And that just kind of took off way more than we ever thought it was going to. Because we're so connected with the local business community, we did a lot of collaborations. I know you mentioned you had done an interview with Connor Curran from Local Laundry. So we've collaborated on our hats and our shirts, so our apparel. Nice. So I'll do a little shout out for our apparel there for Local Laundry. But we collaborated with a bunch of businesses and just basically started bringing coffee and treats to people's doors on a 24-hour basis. And it just completely shifted because, I mean, we were losing out on wholesale coffee shops, restaurants that did carry FIVE'21 already. Luckily for us, a lot of our vision was to really push getting into retail this year. So that's where we want to end up. And it was a tougher journey for sure to try to get into retail because a lot of grocery stores had so many other things on their hands and a lot of restrictions to manage and staff to manage. So there was a lot going on. It's made that a little bit more difficult, but we made a few rash decisions back in the spring that have just kind of shifted us forward. I mean, one of them, we launched an ATB booster crowdfunding campaign back in May, and we mulled the idea for a little bit. We went back and forth, like, do we do this? Like, this timing is so terrible, but we were already talking about doing it before the lockdown came into play. And we're like, do we do this? Like, it's bad time to be asking people for, we had set a target of 10,000. What a time to ask people to donate or help us out with $10,000 to move our business forward. But we pulled the trigger on it and hit the target. And it just sort of gives you that confidence in the business that, hey, people support us. There's a backing there. We have something that people want to follow and want to support. And it just kind of lit a fire, I think, and just opened so many doors, and it's just completely changed a lot of things. So, I mean, COVID in a good way worked for us. We were fortunate that we roast out of Trevor's garage still. I don't know how we do it still because we've blown up his garage at the moment. We're looking at a warehouse space now, but I mean, we were lucky because we didn't have those crazy overhead fees that everybody else was dealing with and worrying about paying rent and worrying about paying for the bills and all that sort of stuff. We were able to just continue on and not have that stress lingering behind us. So
I know the vaccine's coming, and but we're probably going to be dealing with this through into 2021. What are kind of your next steps? What's the game plan for FIVE'21 in, let's say the next 3 to 5 years? What do you guys see happening?
A warehouse? Honestly, like Chris, that's a great question. I mean, we've started to talk about those ideas and put them down on paper individually, and then collectively, Matt and I have been kind of working together on starting to get those ideas put together. We want a larger retail presence. We currently have a couple locations with our coffees in it. We're going through major change. We just put in our first 20,000 bag order 2 days ago. So we're waiting on those coming early 2021. Let's keep it nice and open. But yeah, so we're currently in a couple stores here locally, Fresh and Local, Homegrown Pantry in Airdrie. Obviously, we have our online presence with the 24-hour deliveries. Federated Co-op, we're around Alberta now. So we're in Barrhead, Fort Saskatchewan, Camrose, and 2 locations in Red Deer, Bite and Inglewood, and then we're in 3 of Blush Lane's locations. And then a 5-year vision, let's go long. I want to be able to, our vision is to connect closer to the farmers. We want that direct trade. Chris, if you're not the farmer talking to me about your coffee, then I'm really not interested in purchasing, right? So we do have 4 of our coffees currently that are direct farm, and there's still a long way to go. We may have just came over a nice hurdle with one of our Brazilian coffees, which is next to near impossible to find traceable, but we've got it. We've got an organic one coming in, so that'll be kind of neat. But 5 years from now, we want to be boots on the ground, relationships with direct farmers, traveling the world, seeing what each farmer's doing and the impact that we're having on those farms.
Yeah, and just to add there to Trevor, some of our target for 2020 was to start visiting those farms. Obviously, COVID put a complete halt to that, so all travel plans were kind of shoved aside, and we weren't able to go that route. But I think down the road, I mean, ultimately for us, we're focused on the bigger coffee brands. Calgary and Alberta have some really great coffee roasters and really great coffee companies, and there's some that are doing some amazing things in specialty coffees and all that sort of stuff. We have our sights more set on like the larger ones, the Kicking Horses, the larger brands out there, and how do we set ourselves up to compete with them, because that's the larger market of coffee, and the specialty space is, there's companies around that are doing amazing work in that space, and plus we want to support the local businesses as well, and just make sure that they're having success as well in their area. But we're all in coffee, but we're all heading a little bit in a different direction.
Trevor, Matt, I do thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us and telling us a little bit about your story. Definitely look forward to continue working with you guys, and definitely like to have you back on and get an update later in 2021 and see where everyone's at.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to it.
Thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. And if you've got a great story you want to tell about an Alberta organization or business, make sure to visit amplifyalberta.com and submit the story to us. We'll catch you guys next time.